Hey guys, my name's Lee from Lee's Kitchen. Today we are canning pickles. So recently I went shopping and I saw Lebanese cucumbers on special and I thought, I think it's about time I made some more pickles. So I'm going to show you how I do them and also how I process them so that they turn out nice and crispy after they've been processed. So today I'll be using a recipe from the National Centre for Home Food Preservation. I'm based here in Australia, but we don't actually have anything like this actually based here in Australia. So I'm using the US endorsed place. So this is the recipe that I'm going to use today for this canning recipe. I'm going to follow the correct ratios of vinegar and everything, but I will be changing the actual spices that actually go into the actual pickling liquid. So for this recipe, it is the quick fresh packed dill pickles, and I'll be linking this one below and then you can use that as your guide. In this recipe you're meant to soak the actual pickles before you can them. I'm not going to bother with that. I'm just going to get them jarred up and get the pickle liquid over them, and then later on I'll show you how to actually process them so they can stay nice and crispy. You don't have to put any additives or anything to it. So as it goes ingredients, let's go through the ingredients. So I've got vinegar, so 5% vinegar. Make sure you double check. If your vinegar is 4%, just add 25% more vinegar and that will make up to your 5% vinegar. I'm using double distilled vinegar and that is 8%, so I'll work out the ratio with that one. I've got some Lebanese cucumbers here. Now these aren't really like canning cucumbers, but they were cheap. They were $1.99, so I kind of jumped at it. And then I also found these mini cucumbers, and they were a bit more expensive, so that's why I haven't got as much as those. Then I've got some dill, I've got some celery seed, some mustard seed, and then we've got some sugar, some salt, so make sure you use a non-iodized salt, or else I'm pretty sure from what I've heard, everything will turn blue. And then your canning jars. So today we're going to be using a water bath canner, which you'd never think I would do because I'm all about steam canning, but for this process, I will be using a water bath canner. So the first thing I'm going to do is just get that warming up, and then we'll get on to fixing up the pickles. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is get these cucumbers all washed up, ready to go, and then we're going to make the pickling liquid. So that's ready to go. So what I do is when I am canning and I do a canning recipe and I really like it, but there's something, you just want to tweak. So with canning recipes, you need to keep the acid the exact same to the water ratio. So water and your vinegar, you cannot touch, but other things such as sugar, salt, and your spices, you can modify. And I like to do that. So what I do is I actually record my recipe down in a book, and then next time I go to can, I can use this as a reference of what I did last time, just in case, last year I might have canned pickles and gone, oh, what did I do that made them so good? Write it down. So now we're going to make the pickling liquid, and it's really easy. So I'm going to use the recipe as a guide, okay? I've probably got about 4 pounds of pickles there. By the time I cut them up, trim them up and everything, I think there'll probably be about 4 pounds left there. And this is for an 8-pound recipe. So I'm going to halve the recipe. And so what we're going to need is 4 cups of water, 1/4 cup of salt, now the recipe only said 1/4 cup of sugar for the full recipe, but I want to add extra sugar to make these actual sweet pickles, so I'm putting 1 cup of sugar for the whole recipe. Then we're going to add 3 cups of 5% vinegar. So this vinegar is double distilled, so it's actually 8%, and it says that on the label. I'm going to put 3 cups of vinegar. And because I'm putting double distilled, it just means that we'll have a bit more of a stronger taste, but I'm fine with that. And I've added the extra sugar to compensate for that. All right, and then all we're going to do is just get this on the stove and just get this warming up. All our spices and everything we'll add directly to the jar, so that way they're all evenly just distributed. All right, so now we're going to cut up the cucumbers. So the first one I'm going to do the mini one. So they say to cut off the blossom end. I'm just going to cut both ends because I'm not entirely sure which one's which. And I'm going to try to stack them in our bigger jars here. So I'm just going to try to lay them down like that and try to fit as many as we can. Hopefully I can fit them all into those 3 big ones. Otherwise I'll use some of the smaller ones as well. So we'll start with those ones and then we'll work on to the big ones. All right, so that's all the little ones. Now we're going to prepare the jars and then we'll get them filled up. All right, so now we're going to fill up the jars. I'm going to just fill up these jars with the little ones now and get that out of the way. So I've decided I've got some pickling spice in my pantry, so I'm going to use that and I'm going to put that in the jars with a bit of dill and then we'll fill it up with the pickles. So the only difference with this pickling spice and what I'm actually putting in the other ones is this has allspice and it also has peppercorn. So that's the only difference. I'm going to pour these into a container just so that when I go to put it in here, there's a few bigger allspice corns and everything. So I want to make sure it's all evenly distributed. And I think we'll put probably maybe a tablespoon of each. That's that. And then we've got some dill. Right, there should be enough of those ones. And then we're going to lay our jar on the side and actually just try and fit as many as we can in. Now, from the looks of it, some of them I'm going to have to actually trim to make sure they actually fit, because you want to make sure they're not actually going over the headspace. Now I think we fit one more in there. There we go. Perfect. And I'm going to do 2 more. So now it's fine, we're done pretty good. So I've managed to fit all except for one into all of those 3 jars. We'll put those aside and we'll start preparing the other ones. All right, so now we're going to start on to the Lebanese cucumbers. Now, I'm not going to lie, I bought these a few days ago, so they are starting to turn just a little bit. Some of them have shriveled up a little bit, so I will be cutting these sections off. But if you can, as soon as you buy your cucumbers, you want to actually do your canning straight away to maintain freshness. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut off the end here, and then I'm going to measure how long the actual jar is. And it goes up to about here. And I'm going to cut it like that. And I'm going to turn this into spears. And then with any of the good stuff, we're just going to cut this into slices. And we'll turn that into sliced pickles. And over time, this is my 3rd time pickling cucumbers. The first time I made all slices and they're okay. And then I did spears like this and I think they just turned out amazing. Just a lovely snack. All right, I'm gonna get all the sliced up and then I'll come back to you when I've sliced it all up. So what I've decided to do is I've got another pack of the pickling spice. So I'll put that into a jar here. And then I've also put some celery seed. and then also some more mustard seeds. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a tablespoon of this into each of the jars, and then the dill. And that just did those jars. Nothing beats fresh dill. I've got dry dill in the pantry and it smells nothing like the real thing. Alright, so now I'm going to fill the jars up with the pickles. So same as the other ones, we're just going to put them on the side and try jam as many as we can in. Alright, so that's our first one. First one done. I'll let you know when the rest is done. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill all these jars up to a 1/4 inch headspace. Then we're going to debubble them. Then we're going to wipe them with vinegar, and then we're going to get lids on. Now, here in Australia, canning equipment is just really expensive. So I have these single piece lids. I know not a lot of people like them or anything like that. I'm fine with using them. Once I get rid of these, I will be transitioning over to the 2-piece lids. Now, if you do find you're in a bit of a pickle and you do find out, that was actually a good one because we're actually making pickles. If you do find out you're going to run out of brine while making your pickles or any other thing that uses brine, you can still make some more up just to follow the exact same ratios of your actual recipe, but just like half it or 1/4 to what you actually need. So now we're going to fill these up to a 1/4 inch headspace. All right, still bubbling away, so I think there's still some bubbles in there. Just get the bubbles full in there. I've packed these in pretty tight, so it is a little bit hard to actually get this in without damaging them too much. All right, and then a headspace 1/4 inch, which is perfect now. So what we're going to do is we're going to wipe the lids with vinegar. So I've got some vinegar on this paper towel here. And I say that I only use vinegar when you're using stuff like fats and everything, but I like to just do it just as a protection thing. And then put our lid on. Being tight, just like that. And I'm going to get right into the upper ones. All right, so now we're going to get these into the canner. So I haven't actually discussed how we're actually going to keep these crispy. So what we're going to do is we're going to do something called low temperature pasteurization. And that means we're going to heat up the canner just gently, and we're going to process these for a longer period. So keeping the canner at a lower temperature will actually help them maintain their crunch because we're not going to bring it up to a boiling temperature. So what we're going to do is we're going to put these into the canner. We're going to cover them with an inch of water, and then we're going to bring the temperature up to between 180 and 185 degrees Fahrenheit. And we're going to keep it there, and we're going to process them for 30 minutes. For those in Australia, that temperature is 82 degrees to 85 degrees, and that's for 30 minutes. And this is an approved method through the National Centre of Home Food Preservation. So I'll give a link for this. And this is only for certain recipes such as pickles. So Just, you can't do it for everything. There will be some recipes that you can do it for though. So let's get them into the counter. So when we do this process, you are going to need something to actually keep an eye on the actual temperature. So for me, I use my barbecue thermometer, and that's to the actual degree. And I use that for my steam counting as well, and that works really well. Another great idea, if you have one of those submergible sous vide machines that can hold temperature at the correct temperature for long periods, that might be a great idea as well to actually do, which I've never seen done, but if it can hold it at 82 degrees, why not? All right, let's get these into the canner. I don't have enough room for all of them, so I'm going to have to process 4 of them separately, unfortunately. All right. So now I'm going to turn the temperature up just a little bit. All right, so now I've got my probe in here, and that's just sitting just dangling in the water there. Once this reaches 82 degrees Celsius or 180 degrees Fahrenheit, we'll start the processing. And we want to make sure that we try and maintain it around that. So you don't want it to drop under 180 degrees Fahrenheit or 82 degrees Celsius, but you don't want it to really exceed 85 degrees Celsius or 185 degrees Fahrenheit, because then you're going to start defeating the process of doing this low temperature processing, and you'll probably start cooking the actual pickles. So once this comes up to 82 degrees, we'll start the processing. So because I couldn't fit those 4 jars in, I was thinking, oh, I'll just wait till I process these and then I'll put the next ones in. But then I remembered my barbecue thermometer takes multiple probes. So what I'm going to do is I've already taken some of this hot water from this canner because it was already overfilled, and I've put it into this pot here. I've got the 4 jars in here submerged with 1 inch of water, and once this one reaches 82 degrees, then I'll start the processing with that one as well and get it both done at the same time. And it is now coffee o'clock. Okay, so I'll put the lids on just so they maintain their temperature just a little bit more, but the probes are still in there. So this one has reached 82 degrees. So now I can start my 30-minute timer for that one. I've turned down the heat just a little bit, and hopefully with the lid on, it should maintain the 82 degrees. The other one's at 77 degrees, so that's not far off. So it's only about 5 minutes off, but it's a much smaller pot. Okay, 4 minutes later, my second pot is now reaching 82 degrees. So now I'm starting the processing of that one as well. And then the great thing about my BBQ app is I've got an app for it. So I've set up the maximum temperature and the set temperature. So you can see they're both at 84 degrees, and that'll communicate to me when they're out of range. So if they're going under 82 or above the 85, they'll beep and let me know. So that way I can go and do a little bit more than just stand around and watch these pots the whole time. All right, now they've been cooled for 5 minutes in the counter. Now we're going to take them out the counter and get them onto a chopping board so that they can seal. All right, so that's all them out. So we'll leave them there for 24 hours just to make sure they all seal. So I hope this helped you with canning your pickles, and you'll notice that you're going to get a much better product from doing the low temperature pasteurization, and I hope you give it a go. Let me know how you go.